We are coming to you live from our studios in Kokomlemle, Accra on digital address at digital address GA0992539 on your DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 144, and around the world at myjoyonline.com. The details now. Investigations by the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice (SHRAJ) into the account of the sacked CEO of the Public Procurement Authority, Jenim Boateng has revealed huge amounts of cash totaling 14.8 million cedis passed through his account since he assumed office at the PPA, and that far in excess of his remuneration and allowances. This figure is the sum of $4 and euro accounts held at two banks. Mr. Jenim Boateng was on Friday dismissed by President Akufo-Addo after SHRAJ ruled that he was unfit to hold public office. The former PPA boss was busted in a JoyNews documentary for alleged sale of government contracts. We bring you excerpts of that documentary.
My investigation, however, reveals a disturbing trade in government contracts. Even more disturbing are those behind it. There is a group of companies off the Manet Junction on the Spintex Road in Accra called the TDL Group. Talent Discovery Limited is its flagship company. This company has nothing to do with the discovery and development of talents, as the name might suggest. This is where the fates of the Chamba Road and other government contracts are held. Talent Discovery Limited is alleged to be using its political connections to win government contracts and then sell them.
So the purpose of this trip to Talent Discovery Limited is to establish two things: that this company actually wins government contracts, and two, that it sells these contracts to prospective buyers. So you'll be dealing with them, not with your real name, of course.
Not your cousin, but your name is on the registration document.
It's not my cousin, he's my in-law, my brother-in-law.
Your brother-in-law, and
Yep.
what's his name?
I will not disclose his name.
Francis Ahim.
Yeah.
And then you are the majority shareholder and also a director.
I'm not the majority shareholder. I'm a director.
A director and then
Yeah.
60% shareholding.
No. It is 50-50.
And who is the second shareholder?
Just two of us.
So it is your company.
I have a shares in it.
Mr. J said though Talent Discovery Limited had been brought to the PPA on many occasions for approval, he was not in a conflict of interest situation because he made full disclosure to the board.
We have information that this company gets a lot of government contracts and then sells them.
They get a lot of government contracts. I'm not aware of that. I'm not.
But that's the information we have.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that.
Okay. So if evidence is produced and then you get to know that this is what the company is engaged in, what would be your action?
Oh, the person who runs the company goes out to look for business. And is there anything wrong with that?
No, but if it is engaged in selling government contracts.
It sells government contracts?
Yes.
I will never be aware.
Okay.
Never be aware.
Okay. But if you get to know, how serious will you treat it?
I'll tell him to stop straight away.
But is it an offense to do that?
To do what? To sell?
Sell government contracts.
Well, the question is, sell by what means?
It takes the contract,
Yeah.
it won't deliver, and it goes to sell.
And how does that work with the company, sorry, the entity that awards the contract?
It
is more of the entity that awards the contracts and the company that you are saying sells.
Yes, but I'm saying if you get to know as a shareholder and director of such a company, how seriously would you take that?
I'll take it serious and tell him that that is not acceptable, because I'm not aware of what you are telling me.
I wrote to ABAJ requesting the board minutes. He promised to give me the week after my interview with him. In a response signed by the board secretary and legal director of the PPA declined to give the board minutes, saying the documents are confidential. The PPA, however, said ABAJ disclosed his interest in Talent Discovery Limited when the company was shortlisted for a contract by the Ministry of Inner Cities and Zongo Development. The PPA board also said ABAJ later recused himself from discussions on 14 other occasions when Talent Discovery Limited was shortlisted for government contracts. A disclosure to the board may however not cure the PPA CEO of conflict of interest because of his own explanation of the process. When sole sourcing and restrictive tendering requests are made to the PPA, the CEO and his team conduct due diligence on the companies and the contracts before recommending to the technical committee of the board to either approve or reject the application.
The unit I set up is a due diligence unit. That due diligence unit actually conducts due diligence.
This means the real work on Talent Discovery Limited at the PPA is done under the supervision of the company's director and majority shareholder before recommendations are made to the board to approve or reject it. After the undercover engagement with the general manager of TDL, I wrote to the company for a response and indicated the content of the secret filming. Lawyers of the company responded on behalf of TDL, denying any wrongdoing. The lawyers said the company did not sanction the actions of the general manager and that he acted on his own. They said disciplinary measures had already been initiated against him, beginning with a query and a suspension, while investigation into his conduct continued. In a response to the query, which the lawyers attached to the company's response to me, the general manager said he acted on his own and did not have the permission of his employers. He also admitted in the response that he demanded and received 15,000 cedis from my undercover agent and issued receipts using letterheads of the company. He said, and I quote, "So I asked him if he is indeed serious for us to proceed, he should pay a commitment fee of 15,000 cedis, and so he paid 5,000 on one occasion. On another occasion, he came to the office to see me for a copy of the contract and made another payment of 10,000 cedis. Even though the company said it did not sanction its general manager's conduct, he did not appear to hide the trade in contracts. He conferred with the secretary a number of times on the sale and payment of deposits during this investigation. He is also the one whose signatures are on the contracts which the company signed with the ministry's department and agencies, the contracts he was selling. Apart from the issue of conflict of interest, participation in government contracts by companies owned by PPA officials can create unfair competition, even if they declare their interest. This is because when government entities send shortlisted companies to PPA for restrictive tendering approval, they often include the contract sum, which is unknown to the companies shortlisted. The PPA official whose company is involved in the bidding process can give information to enhance its tender, and this could raise suspicions, especially when the bidding price is so close to the amount budgeted by the awarding entity. For instance, in the Santa Maria project, the Works and Housing Ministry estimated 2 million cedis for the project. Talent Discovery Limited won the bid with 1,999,600 cedis and 45 pesos, almost exactly the amount earmarked by the ministry.
If you want us to approve, you can add this company behind the scenes, so they will do it and then
Bring it. Well, that is possible if people wants to do that.
The lawyers for TDL say ABAJ was a director and promoter of the company, but he has since resigned. The date of his resignation has not been given, but this company was formed after he was appointed CEO of the PPA in 2017. In August 2018, records at the Registrar General's Department indicated that he was still a director and shareholder of the company. When I interviewed him this month, he said he was a director and shareholder of the company. Beyond being a shareholder and director, ABAJ, according to sources close to the company, is the chairman of the TDL group. The PPA board said had told the board he resigned in September 2017 because his busy schedules at PPA did not give him the time to perform his functions at the company. Ajenim Boateng Ajay is one of the foremost procurement experts in Ghana. When PPA was formed in 2005, he was the first CEO. He He was reappointed in 2017 and entrusted with the authority of the state to lead the PPA to curb procurement irregularities, such as the sale of contracts and other procurement frauds. Almost all the contracts which Talent Discovery Limited won were through restrictive tendering. This means that when this company is involved in such contracts, the company's majority shareholder and director is the same man who supervises due diligence on the company. He may be fair, but when a referee is also a player, his fairness may not be appreciated by the other players. Manasseh Azore Awene reporting.
So those are excerpts of that documentary we brought to you, which led to that investigation that Shraj had. The president actually asked Shraj to look into the conflict of interest bit, and the special prosecutor was supposed to focus on corruption. Well, Shraj has done its work and we have the findings, but Shraj, during its probe, investigated claims of whether or not Mr. Ejay had improperly used his office for personal gain. My colleague Winston Amwa is here with us with details of that report by Shraj. So Winston, Shraj went a step further. They decided, beyond looking at whether he used his office in a way which he wasn't supposed to or not, they looked into his accounts. What did they find?
Well, exactly. So it alleges that, the respondent, it says the respondent took advantage of his office to improperly enrich himself. Now, Mr. Ejay strongly denied this through his solicitor. Shraj is saying that, look, it can see from the records received from the Financial Intelligence Center of the bank accounts of Mr. Ejay that he handled large volumes of cash in excess of his known income as CEO of the PPA.
So how did he respond to this?
Well, when he was confronted with the evidence of, the sheer volume of cash that passed through his account, he indicated that, for instance, Frosty Eyes Natural Mineral Water Limited, it's a company he owns with his wife. That's Mercy Ejay. And since she doesn't have a bank account, the proceeds from the sale of the water are actually lodged in his account. Now, he also claims that he receives monies from, other families and businesses, but could not name the family businesses that he receives the money from. And here's what is actually interesting. The records from the Registrar General's department shows that Frosty Eyes Natural Mineral Water was incorporated on the 29th of January 2019.
Okay.
2019. So the question is, how could a company established in 2019 accumulate so much revenue in 2017 and 2018 before its establishment? And Shraj, has since referred these findings to the Economic and Organized Crime Office for further investigations for possible money laundering and other crimes.
All right, I'll come back to you to find out more about what Shraj is saying in regards to the board of directors and how some decisions that were made were handled by the former PPA boss. Meanwhile, Director of Advocacy and Policy Engagement at the CDD, Dr. Kojo Asante, says the investigation has revealed failure in the banking system that must be addressed.
Judgment, which I think we can take forward. Now, the issue about what else?
The part you said about Manasseh and being young and being able to do this.
Yeah.
Now, as his brother and lawyer, I can tell you something, that there have been situations, and some of them I have not even referred to him, where people have tried to get to him to compromise him. And when they are unable to succeed, they think that they could do it through some other source. And it can be very tempting. Yeah. But he doesn't even think about it.
No, I think it's a calling.
Yeah. When he was using only just a motorbike, he would not compromise. Not this time. So all of you people, we serve you notice.
Yeah, no, it's a calling, and there are so few of them, right, that I think for me they are really national treasures that we have to, protect. Yes, I think for me this was a racket, right from the beginning, because this is a particular case that work had already has started. The Auditor General was, had already identified a few things. The Special Prosecutor, they were all looking into this matter. So it's one of the most perverse things that you can imagine, that the person who has been entrusted with the responsibility of regulating public procurement is the one that basically creates this scheme, to abuse that process and take advantage.
Procurement is the biggest avenue for corruption.
Yeah,
the big corruption
is the biggest. And so for me, there are a couple of things that has to happen. Yes, the corruption aspects has to be looked at by the special prosecutor. The case is already before him. I think this particular judgment makes it easy. You know where to follow, which leads you have to follow. The anti-money laundering part has been sent to Yoko. I think they need to consolidate, their efforts, because if criminal charges might be brought, you can easily combine your efforts and your resources to pursue this.
Well, Winston is still here with me. Finally, before he leaves, Winston, there's another aspect of that report regarding decisions made by the board of the PPA.
Exactly. So Shad relies on a report, on a letter from the board on the 3rd of May 2018. Now, in that letter, the board says that, look, Candace International Limited and TDL should be replaced for reasons of suspected ownership. However, according to the Shad investigations, Mr. J wrote a letter on the same day to the agency that had requested approval for the contract, and he includes TDL among the list of approved companies, but excludes the Candace International Limited, which Shrag indicates that was also disqualified. So in this instance, TDL was supposed not to have been included, but then he includes it contrary to the board's decision.
Thank you very much. Winston Amwatha with details of that Shrag report on this matter. Away from that, Ghana's COVID-19 cases may be significantly higher than the official figures released by the Ghana Health Service. That's according to a new study by scientists at the University of Ghana, which reveals as many as 1.2 million people may have been infected in Accra alone, and that's about 20% of people living in Accra and Kaswa, and they may have been exposed to the COVID-19 virus. A new study by scientists at the University of Ghana found more people have significantly been infected by SARS-CoV-2, the virus which causes the COVID-19, than Ghana's 47,991 confirmed cases would suggest. The West African Center for Cell Biology of Infectious Pathogens, WASPIP, and the Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research conducted the study. There's more in the following report.
Was conducted in public places, including municipal markets and lorry stations in Accra and Kaswa, shopping malls in Accra, and COVID-19 testing centers and other research institutions, health centers in Accra. Using a pre-validated antibody rapid diagnostic test, RDT, the scientists were able to determine exposure to SARS-CoV-2, the virus which causes COVID-19, by detecting COVID-19 antibodies in blood samples taken from the participants. Antibodies are blood proteins produced by the immune system to counteract a specific foreign disease-causing agent. According to the scientists, these tests are only able to detect exposure to the virus with about 70% accuracy because antibodies wane after some time and may be hard to detect in some individuals. In a webinar hosted by scientists at the University of Ghana, Director of West African Center for Cell Biology of Infectious Pathogens, Professor Gordon Awandari, said the findings is probably an underestimation because the tests carried out during the study are not 100% sensitive, meaning it's possible a good percentage of people who have been exposed did not manifest on the results. But in spite of this, he said with 20% prevalence in Accra as revealed by the study, it means about 1.2 million people in Accra may have already been infected, a significantly higher figure than the 47,000 national figures being reported by the Ghana Health Service. The scientists also discussed the evolution of the virus in Ghana following further genome sequencing. Evidence from the genome sequences also suggests that the virus has changed its genetic makeup, and some unique variants can now be found in Ghana that have not been identified anywhere else in the world.
Those are details of that study conducted by the Noguchi Memorial Institute and the West African Center for Cell Biology of Infectious Pathogens. We've been joined by Dr. Yalbidiako. He's a research fellow at WASPIP. Thank you so much for joining us, Doc. It's a pleasure to have you here. We were hoping that we could be having some good conversation by this time about Ghana's fight against COVID-19, but it appears the statistics are pointing elsewhere. Let's start off from the bit of the 5 different strains of the virus, because that's interesting. What does that really mean? Does it mean that if you have 5 people, for example, and they each have the different strains, they may exhibit different symptoms or different transmission rates? Or just help us understand what that really means.
I thank you, Bernice, for having me. I think it is, well, with the sequencing we've done of the virus so far, it appears that, yes, there have been certain novel variants that we've identified in Ghana. In general, though, the virus is still quite similar to the Wuhan strain, and that is something that has been seen from sequencing done globally. The virus appears to mutate quite slowly. There are certain variants that have been shown to be more transmissible, and we certainly have identified some of those variants in Ghana. As yet, though, no variant has been associated with more severe disease. So some variants appear to be transmitted more easily, but as yet, no variant has been associated with worse outcome as far as disease goes. But I think what we take from the fact that we are uncovering unique variants in Ghana is that we have community spread. So if all the cases were imported, then all our viruses should look identical to what has been reported elsewhere. But the fact that we are finding differences in viruses collected in Ghana and basically strains of the virus that have not been reported elsewhere, it suggests that the virus is evolving in Ghana. In order for the virus to evolve in Ghana, it has to transmit between people in Ghana. So I think for now, we wouldn't really say that the changes in the virus are necessarily meaning the virus is becoming more or less virulent, but it's very strong evidence for community transmission and community spread.
In your write-up or release that I have right here, you talk about the relationship between your findings and where the people worked. For example, you found out that about 27% of people, that is those who were tested at markets and lorry stations, they had a higher exposure rate than persons around the malls, and that's around 9%. You also discovered that having a higher level of education and a high level of income also significantly reduced one's risk of being exposed compared to those who had lower levels of education. I'm just wondering why we don't have anything here in terms of the correlation between wearing of the masks and prevention of spread, because that has been a major talking point, not even here, just here in Ghana, but all around the world, where people have tried to fight off claims that wearing a mask would really protect people from contracting the virus.
All right, thank you. I think, well, I'll take the first part of your question first. So yes, we have shown a clear association between socioeconomic status and risk of COVID infection. And I think, in the beginning, this virus was termed the middle-class virus because it was thought that it was in Eastbourne and Jolu, and it was in people who had traveled and come from abroad. That was because the virus was imported. So in the beginning, it was typically with people who had recently come from Europe or North America and with their immediate family. But as the virus has now spread within the country, we are seeing greater transmission within people who are in lower socioeconomic ranks. And typically that has to do with use of public transportation. It has to do with crowding conditions at home. So if you live in a compound house with 20 or 30 other people versus living in a single family home, your risk is significantly more. If you take trotro to work as opposed to driving in your own car, obviously your risk is also more. So now that the virus is spreading within the community, it is following trends that you see with many communicable diseases, where individuals who live in more crowded conditions, who are less financially stable, who perhaps have less education, typically are more at risk. In our study, we found that people who work in the informal sector are much more at risk than people who work in the more formal sector. So that is demonstrating how the virus is spreading. Now, when you come to the mask wearing, within this study, we administered a survey where we assessed people's knowledge about COVID-19 and knowledge about the guidelines that have been put out. Interestingly, we found that nearly everybody, over 80 to 90% of people, had very good knowledge about the virus. They understood it was a serious disease. They understood that it could kill you. And they understood that in order to prevent transmission, you should wear a mask, you should wash your hands, you should use alcohol-based hand sanitizers. So the issue has not been one of information. It is an issue of adherence. Many of these people, even though they were telling us that they should wear a mask, were not wearing a mask. And actually part of our outreach was to give them masks and ask them to wear them whilst we were doing the interview. Many of these people, though, the moment they finished the interview, walked away, we saw them taking off the mask.
It's very interesting, Doc, but I'm just reminded of our previous conversation about testing and whether or not we were doing well, because we were applauding ourselves. We were excited that our numbers were declining, but it appears we are beginning to see that our lack of testing is really what may have been giving us those figures in the first place, and they may not have been what was really on the ground.
Yes, you're exactly right. I mean, I think I've been on your program and others, and a number of my colleagues have done. And, we've pointed out that with a virus, a disease such as this that is largely, mildly, or asymptomatic. So for over 80% of people who get infected, they won't show any symptoms. It's difficult to detect this virus unless you are actively testing for it. And in the beginning of the pandemic in Ghana, we were very aggressive in testing. We had a mass contact tracing exercise, mass testing. And so we really went after looking for these cases. Now, in subsequent months, our approach has changed. The guidelines in terms of testing have now shifted. So now we are focusing on seriously symptomatic people. And so that, many of us have been saying the decline in cases is not a reflection of the fact that the virus is under control. It is simply a reflection of the fact that our testing protocols have changed. So now our testing is focused on people who are symptomatic. We are not going out to test contacts. Now, part of the rationale for that has been the cost of the test and the fact that it would appear as though the case fatality rates in Ghana are lower than they are in other places. And so the argument has been how many resources do we put into mass testing? But, that point well taken, it also means that we cannot therefore place a lot of stock in the fact that we have 300 active cases, or now we have about 500 active cases. That is not an indication of how much COVID is in Ghana. That is simply an indication of how many people we've tested. So studies like this are much better indicators of the burden of disease. And I believe actually the Ghana Health Service is about to start a seroprevalence study of their own. So I think, we have to be careful that we don't think that now, before we had thousands of active cases, now we have 500, and we think, we've passed our peak. That is actually not accurate. In reality, there's a lot of COVID going around. Indeed, based on our evidence, 20%, and that's an underestimation because the test we used was only 70% sensitive. So if you adjust upwards, you're looking at maybe almost 28% of people in Accra and its environs. Now that's just in Accra, right? So there's 1.2 million people in Accra. Now you add Kumasi, you add other parts of the country. We have, significant numbers of people who have been exposed. And I should add, when I say exposed, it means infected. So these are people who have been infected with COVID and many of whom thankfully have recovered.
Finally, Doc, I know for natural scientists like yourself, you like to shy away from answering questions on which may appear quite political and all, but I still need to ask you this because we know that there is a relationship between social science and natural science. And in COVID, we know that gathering people's behavior and all that have an impact on how we win this fight against the virus. We are about 35 days to the elections. We've seen some major political events, not the rallies that we used to see previously, but in Kumasi just this weekend, we saw a walk of a sort which gathered so many people, and many of them not wearing masks, closely, standing together. Going into the elections, what should we be preparing for? How should we make sure that this doesn't, spiral into something else? Some have predicted a possible second wave and all that. So everybody stay safe.
I think this is an important point to be raised. I mean, I was on a show earlier this morning, and the point was made. Ghana isn't entering a second wave because we never exited our first wave. In many ways, we are we have a constant transmission that's happening. The declines have been purely due to the change in testing strategy. So in actual fact, we have significant numbers of people who are infected. And actually, it's a little bit concerning to see that over the past 19 days, the number of confirmed cases has doubled from about 300 to now 500 and something. I mean, I think that indicates these are people who are sick, right? Because our testing is now only focusing on people who are sick, it suggests that over the last 19 days, more people are actually getting sick. And so that fits with what our data is suggesting, that there is significant community spread. And of course, large gatherings are spreader events. We're seeing this in the US, we're seeing this in Europe, where they are entering second lockdowns. When you have large events, whether it's a political rally or a funeral or a wedding, when people are not socially distanced and are not wearing masks, you're going to have transmission. And so I think, I hope that our study will re-emphasize the fact that we are not anywhere out of the woods. In fact, COVID is all around us. We have been fortunate that the case fatality rates has not been as high as elsewhere, but there are long-term effects of COVID infection that are coming to light, chronic disease that is linked to COVID that we may still suffer from. And of course, there are still people who are vulnerable to dying from COVID. And as our numbers continue to rise, that number, unfortunately, will also rise. So I think it calls for caution. It's not just in politics, but in many areas. When I see people having large gatherings as if life has gone back to normal, it is a mistake. And I think we all have to take personal responsibility to adhere to the guidelines that we all clearly know about, but are currently flaunting. Because COVID is here, it doesn't appear to be going anywhere. And it presents, like I've said before, it presents more than just a health risk. It also presents an economic risk, because the last thing Ghana needs is to be the last bastion of COVID, as it were. As other countries get theirs under control, if we don't get ours under control, we will be blacklisted, as it were. Nobody would want to either come here or us to go there for us to take COVID with us. So I think we have to abide by the guidelines and try as much as possible to minimize the spread of this virus, because it is significantly embedded in our communities, and we need to get a better handle on it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Dr. Yao Bediako is an immunologist with the West African Center for Cell Biology of Infectious Pathogens, and they, together with the Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research, conducted this study that we've been discussing. Away from that, welcome to your election headquarters. And the opposition NDC is accusing the Electoral Commission of printing over 150,000 extra ballot papers. At a news conference Sunday, the party accused the EC of deliberately failing to release details of the processes, and they believe this is an attempt to rig the December elections. Manuel Kranting has more in the following report.
The Electoral Commission began the printing of the ballot papers ahead of the December election on October 26, 2020. Now, the main opposition party, the National Democratic Congress, is accusing the Electoral Commission of failing to present to it the ballot statistics for the printing exercise. Professor Joshua Alabi is National Campaign Coordinator of the party.
The Electoral Commission failed to provide the ballot statistics required for party agents to track the number of ballot papers to be printed for each polling stations before printing begins. Meanwhile, in all previous exercises, political parties were furnished with copies of the ballot statistics before printing began. The Electoral Commission rather directed the NDC to receive copies of the ballot statistics from the printing houses. From the ballot statistics received from the printing houses, as coming from the EC, we have analyzed the figure from 13 regions and observed that there is an excess of over 150,000 ballot papers being printed beyond the extra 5% required.
Deputy Director of Elections of the party, Daniel Amate Mensah, gives a breakdown of their findings.
Central region has 23 constituencies. The total figure, in addition to the 5% for central region, is 45,750. Averagely 2,117 per constituency. In Bono East has 11 constituencies. The total excess is 47,000. Averagely 4,000 plus per constituency. The question is, if a constituency with a voter population of 24,000 have excess of 7,000, in percentage terms, we are talking about 27.5%. I mean, it is just unbelievable. And the question is, you can't say these ones are mistake, because when you look at the figures, the percentage are not uniform. They are deliberately planned to rig the election ahead of the election itself, over 150,000. And we believe that currently we are waiting for the ballot statistics for Ashanti region and Western region. And if you look at the spread, we know what we'll be getting from Ashanti region will be more than those that we have revealed to you.
Well, the director of elections of the party, Elvis Efriye Ankara, says that all attempts by the party to obtain ballot statistics from the Electoral Commission have proven futile.
If you've given the statistics to the printing houses, give it to us. What is so difficult? What is the problem? You've given it to the printing houses. Give us copies so that we can validate whatever goes on. That should tell you that this thing was planned. And as my deputy was saying, if you look at the statistics and the way that in specific constituencies you see specific numbers, it shows you a very clear agenda.
The party is therefore requesting an immediate explanation from the Electoral Commission as to the reasons for these extra ballot papers that are being printed.
Now we are aware of it. So we want the EC to come and explain to us how come that we have these numbers, and then we'll take it from.
Well, the Electoral Commission has been responding to the allegations made by the NDC. Earlier on the AM show, here's Acting Director of Public Affairs at the Commission, Sylvia Anno.
We have our booklets in 100, 50, 25, and 10. So depending on each scenario, for example, if you have a polling station that has, for example, about 88, you need to add 5% because of the numbers involved. In hundreds, 50 cents, we need to strategize and make sure that some may go a little above it. But it doesn't mean because you don't have them in the specific numbers, you have them in 50s, 100s, it becomes very difficult to stick to the exact number. But that doesn't also mean that we are increasing the ballot. So that has been the norm this time immemorial. The bottom line is what I want the general public to understand is the fact that the political parties are there to make sure that they observe the process, to make sure that they capture the numbers involved. And also, at the end of the day, when the ballots are being casted to the various regions or the various destinations throughout the country, they are given the opportunity to affect their seal, with numbers. So the political parties are supposed to know the number of ballot papers that are going to the field at each from each printing house.
Okay, now the NDC say that. Now let's stay on elections, but this time outside Ghana. Vote counting is still underway in Ivory Coast, in the West African country, but opposition leaders there are demanding a civil transition following the polls their parties boycotted. Pascal Afi Ingwesan and Henry Konan Bedier say it was illegal for President Alassane Ouattara to stand for a third term as it broke rules on term limits, but the president's supporters dispute this, citing a constitutional change in 2016 which they say means his first term effectively did not count. My colleague Justice Bedu has been monitoring events in our neighboring country and joins us via Zoom with more. So tell us more on what's happening, Justice, in Ivory Coast.
So, Bernice, I think the situation in Ivory Coast now is very much of uncertainty, no one being sure exactly what is going to happen next. The election came to a close on Saturday, close of the Saturday, and the ballot counting followed up immediately. Unfortunately, there had been reports of violence in many places, especially in the capital, Abidjan. There were actually polling stations where people physically prevented the Electoral Commission from mounting their setup, and in which places elections did not happen at all. We are aware that at least 2 people had been killed on Saturday in Ivory Coast as the elections went by because of reported cases of violence that were across the country. The election did proceed in many other places, especially in the stronghold regions of the incumbent President Alassane Ouattara, which is mainly in northern Ivory Coast. And the initial vote count that have been coming in, there are places where the president is securing more than 90% of the votes that have been counted. As you did indicate, all the 3 other contenders have described the election as a sham, and they have actually asked now at a press briefing that they held yesterday that there should be a transitional team that would transition the country for the next government, because according to them, President Alassane Ouattara's official term ended Saturday, and they do not recognize his new bid to run for a 3rd term. Venice.
Earlier, you brought us a report from a refugee camp at Ampain, where some residents in Ivory Coast were moving to Ghana because of fear of violence. We understand that some of them are being blocked from coming into Ghana now?
Yes, because Ghana still has its borders closed, and that includes that of Elubo, which is on the western border with Ivory Coast. And since President Ouattara announced his 3rd term bid in August, there has been violence in many parts, especially in strongholds of the opposition. And that has led to the death of at least not less than 15 people and many others who have been injured. And so in many stronghold regions of the opposition, there is a lot of people who are beginning to find places where they would be secure.
All right.
My sources within the refugee community of the Ivory Coast say that many of them are being turned back at the Ivorian border with Ghana. And obviously, because the Ghanaian border is closed, many of them are not able to come in. And those who are risking it are using unapproved means to enter Ghana, Venice.
Right. Thank you very much, Justice Bedu, with details of what's happening with regards to the Ivorian election.
Hi, good morning. Welcome to Business. My name is Darrell Kwao. Business Development Minister Dr. Ibrahim Mohamed Awal has revealed that processes are underway to introduce a startup bill that will create a conducive environment for small businesses in the country. Interacting with the media after the 3rd Ghana Business Awards, he noted that the bill, when passed into law, will exempt startup businesses from paying taxes for up to 8 years. There's more in this report.
The Deputy Energy Minister also told Joy Business that ECG's coffers holds a credit balance of 500 million cedis. This, he says, forms part of government's efforts to address the woes of the sector.
Indebtedness has been settled and a credit balance of 500 million Ghana cedis paid.
The startup bill, according to the minister, Dr. Ibrahim Mohamed Awal, will not only boost the growth of small businesses, but also make entrepreneurship more attractive to the youth, thereby broadening the nation's economy.
In the next few weeks, we are going to present a bill to Cabinet, a startup bill, where this bill will seek to provide tax credit, tax holiday for startups up to 8 years. So I want startups, when you start a business for 8 to 10 years, you not pay taxes. Essence to encourage young people to grow, plow back their profit and expand their business.
Talking about this startup bill, at what stage is it now, and what informed your decisions to come up with this bill?
We say in Ghana, the small businesses constitute about 80% of it, and they contribute about 65% to GDP. But the startup economy is not the best in this country. One business startup, they don't last. The statistics show that only 50% of businesses go beyond their founders, and it's very bad. It means that out of every 100 businesses, only 15 survive when the founders exit either death or retirement. This is not good.
Speaking on government's plan for small and medium enterprises amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, Dr. Awal disclosed SME's mobile clinic will be introduced to visit and educate all operators across the country.
Because of the pandemic, we are going to start what we call the mobile SME clinic, where we'll send mobile business about services to all SMEs in the country. The first 3 months, targeting 1 million SMEs, build their capacity so that they can get back to business, create jobs for the young people. We intend to generate about 10 billion cedis from this mobile clinic, because if you give these startups the training, marketing, pitching, branding, financial management, etc., they will to bounce back and create jobs for the people. So I want to urge everybody that when this mobile SME clinic comes, please patronize them. Already under the CARES program, government is providing over 2 billion cedis to support SMEs. And the mobile clinic for startups is also one of those initiated by government to improve the business environment.
A total of 72 awards were presented to companies and personalities for their excellent work at the Ghana Business Awards 9th. This saw founder of the Fidelity Group, Edward Efa, pronounced the Chief Executive Officer of the Decade. Jospon Group of Companies founder Dr. Joseph Sian Ejapon was also adjudged the Entrepreneur of the Decade. Goldfields Ghana's Chief Executive Officer Alfred Baku emerged as the CEO of the Year Private Sector, whilst Dr. Ben K.D. Asante of Ghana National Gas Company was declared CEO of the Year Public Sector. Vodafone Ghana picked the award for Brand of the Year, whereas Ecobank Ghana won the Company of the Year award, among others.
And that was your quick business update. Sports is up next.